This is the ERP Advisor. Today's episode, Increasing Efficiency for Manufacturing ERP Software.
Sean Windle is one of our speakers for today. Sean is the founder and managing principal of ERP Advisors Group based in Denver, Colorado. Sean has over 20 years of experience in the enterprise software industry, helping hundreds of clients across many industries with selecting and implementing a wide variety of enterprise solutions. Quentin DeWitt is our guest today. Quentin is a director at ERP Advisors Group and has been in the information technology business for more than 20 years and has worked with many manufacturers through his many years. On today's call, we will examine how ERP solutions for inventory control, real-time reporting, and material requirements planning can help streamline manufacturing processes and increase productivity. Sean, Quentin, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Yes. So diving right in, today we are discussing manufacturing ERP software, focusing on the aspects that will help improve efficiency for businesses. So with that said, Sean, what are we seeing in the manufacturing ERP landscape in terms of the overall picture as it is currently today?
Yeah, it's a great question too, because it's changing, which is good.
Yeah. Okay.
I think what I've seen in terms of evolution over 25 years now, we have to update my biography. I don't know if that's good or not, actually. That's fine. We'll just say what we're going. Was a major focus in the 80s and the 90s on sort of basic automation, getting sort of basic information into a system and moving from really MRP, material requirements planning, into overall ERP for manufacturers. So using systems to determine how much we should buy, basically, and when, kind of what we should buy, when we should buy it, and based off lots of different criteria. Really, that's sort of the basics of MRP. But then over time, these systems have evolved into really trying to automate almost all the processes within a manufacturing organization. And not just sort of width, but depth too. So going very, very deep in terms of functionality that a manufacturer would require. So I think that is sort of the trend that there's probably three of them that I would share that we're seeing as we've sort of continued to evolve from that basic MRP to ERP and sort of, next generation ERP and business transformation and all that kind of stuff. The first thing is definitely, like I said, sort of depth of automation, like even something like shop floor execution, being able to track time down to a work order and materials that are going into work orders and like in real time, right? It sounds pretty basic. And I'm thinking with like our client in Walla Walla, Washington, or some others that we can talk to specifically, Gwen, that you've worked on mostly, that, a smaller organization is able to really get their costing down to very specific tasks that are being accomplished, which is pretty cool because now they actually know, well, we're going to price based off of what things actually take plus markup instead of what we think they are. So definitely the depth of functionality in manufacturing execution, shop floor execution is a big trend for sure. I think another good trend that we're seeing is sort of this, the intelligent enterprise kind of concept of how do we bring automation across all of the departments, right, together, and then bringing information in across those departments to do more analytics and reporting on. So sometimes I do sound like a software salesperson. I just do. And this is one where I'm going to that, even if we think about Infor, we've been talking about them quite a bit this summer. Right. They have an application called Burst that's built right into the infrastructure of some of the Cloud Suite products. And I love that thing. Like, especially Carly loves it too from our team, who's been in that seat several times. It's great because now we have all this data about the enterprise and the ERP, but then we have the business intelligence and analytics built right into the ERP platform, even as opposed to outside of it, like a Power BI or Tableau or whatever, right? This is right in the ERP. And I think we're actually reporting on this in the ERP news more and more too, that we're seeing many more vendors are building those analytics platforms right in to the transaction systems, which is super cool because it's all right there and it's easy to get to and more practical, right? We love practical solutions for our clients. I think the third thing that we're seeing is a very interesting trend. This is like super real time, right? That we're coming out of, well, we're COVID phase 1. Now we're in COVID phase Delta or whatever it is, right? And we've all sort of did the work from home last year. They're still sort of coming back to the office, kind of not. That's all like knowledge worker stuff, right? But manufacturers, right? They were in their store, the shop still, right? They were considered what was the designation?
Oh,
essential. That's right. So many of our manufacturers continued, and we had situations where COVID outbreaks and people's families. It's like, oh my gosh, like this is a big deal, right? So I think we all sort of got through that. Our manufacturing clients got through that, which was kind of painful to watch that, frankly, and concerning. Like I'm thinking about even the tapes manufacturer we work with in town and just some of the things like, whoa, like many of our clients went through a lot last year. Now, what we're seeing now is that they do have a lot of capital available for investment. So kind of the PPP loans and sort of getting out of that period and now sort of like, whoa, what do we do next? And so there's just a lot of kind of technology investments that we're seeing manufacturers willing to take now that they weren't a couple of years ago.
Right.
We have another client that Doug is working on our team that's actually in Denver also. Nice to have local clients because we can go visit them. And they've been on their legacy system for many, many years. Actually, we have 2 of them that are like that in town. And they've decided that's it. We need to get not just a cloud, right? We've talked a lot about cloud with COVID and everything.
Right.
But like we want to automate the business more. We want to leverage more sort of newer technologies. And we're willing to make that jump. And we know it's going to be expensive, but we're really willing to do it. So we're sort of seeing manufacturers kind of coming out of the woodworks, you could say. Folks that would normally stay on their apps because they're good enough. Not doing that. They're saying, I've got to change. I want to change. I've got the capital. I see the market opportunity. Supply chains are still tight. There's that whole thing we could talk about for a week. And it's true, right? We have a client that just went live over Labor Day. And we were just talking this morning about how things were going. And they're saying their order allocations are a nightmare because they don't have enough inventory still. They're still waiting for shipments from overseas. So they're trying to figure out how to give all their customers a little bit. So that they don't upset somebody and that person goes to another competitor. So this third item, like I'm saying, is a little more macro kind of economic kind of based, but even down to the really micro level of individual clients that we're working with, they really are seeing that software can give them more insight and more intelligence. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about like AI and manufacturing and that, which will be good. But it's a really good time to be looking at manufacturing software for manufacturing companies because there's some great options and a lot of the sort of, gradient approach we talk about this. NetSuite does a beautiful job with their Suite Success model where it's sort of, do the basics remediation, then get in place sort of optimization, and then you're looking at more competitive advantage. I don't know what their steps are, but it's that concept of gradients that we talk a lot about. And now's a great time, and we're having a lot of successes with our customers on getting in that sort of like, whoa, we got to remediate. We got to get one item master that really matters. We got to get our manufacturing part numbers right. We've got to go in and understand our costs for real. Systems are ready for that. There's tons of implementation partners that can help with that. So that's super exciting. That's probably the biggest trend.
Well, it sounds like that from what just used to be inventory has evolved to so much more, like forecasting and reporting and just being able to maybe pull your reports from afar rather than having to be on site, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's been a huge difference. I just to mention that one thing, and then layer on top of that because we had drop ship and we had other business models, maybe vendors. We would own the inventory, but it would go to a vendor to do some finished product, and then they would send it to our customer, or they would send it to our distribution centers, or whatever kinds of crazy things. We have one company we're talking to right now that basically takes the order, and then everything goes to a vendor, and it's their inventory, and then they complete it, and then it goes to the customer. There's all kinds of crazy scenarios going on. So having a system that tracks that's like super vital for sure.
Right, because once it's out of your hands, do you really know where it is? And did the other person actually receive it on their end, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So Quentin, as we have discussed in many of these calls and webinars, you've been working with different manufacturing clients recently. What are you seeing, and can you talk to us about the experience from working down in the trenches, so to speak?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you have all sorts of manufacturers, and there's everything from light, very simple manufacturing all the way to very complex, multiple levels of the bill of materials that go into different work centers across multiple locations. Even sometimes it'll be, one component's built in one place and it goes on from there. So there's a lot that can be gained from ERP in these situations. And what I've seen from down in the trenches is, even though these manufacturing organizations have an ERP platform, many of them are still using paper to track that shop floor process. And they do it, they track it on paper, it goes from one work center to the next, they build out a component, but they're not really relieving inventory in the system. They're not really seeing where that moved through their transactional, so they can't update, the visibility, they can't tell from their available or promise reports where something is really at or when they're going to be able to deliver it. They can't necessarily even see if it's a long manufacturing process, when they're going to need a certain component, unless they're entering that and seeing it in real time. So I've seen a transition, especially over the pandemic, of needing more automation and more artificial intelligence really in the whole process, so that you have tracking on the shop floor. You can convert that paper process to an automated electronic process and move it through each of those work centers or phases or even locations, see what inventory got consumed, what maybe serial numbers went into that, because that may be a compliance or regulatory factor, lot tracking or control can be involved. So there's so much that has been done on paper, even when ERP has been there, that now we really have to get that edge in manufacturing because of supply chain issues, because of other things. They're moving away from that and really needing to take advantage of the automation and intelligence built into these platforms. So that's a little bit. I can go much deeper.
That is a lot, right? For sure, you could break down each
Dang.
one of those, right?
Exactly.
And talk about it for the whole.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
there's plenty that can be said from the supply chain side, and getting inventory in and when it's going to arrive and what work center it needs to be, given to, and if you have to issue it or if you consume it after the fact. There's all sorts of factors in that, as well as just a lot of shop floors are not even set up yet to be electronic. So they don't really have dashboards or screens that can show where something is in a build process, or if a work order is complete, or what you have in your queue to do next. And you just get it when it shows up, and it has a stack of paperwork with it. What do I do with this? Oh, okay, I'm going to be building this. You can miss out on a lot of efficiency if you don't have that electronic backing of a system that knows what's going on.
Well, is the paperwork, does it go with from person to person, or does it go with item to item?
Item to item, or it's usually called like a traveler, literally, right? Where there's a whole stack of paper. We have one client that requires regulatory documents that go with parts that different work centers will put on different parts. So there's a piece of paper that maybe goes with that part, boop, it goes with the traveler, right? And then you can almost think of it like a plastic envelope, because that's usually what they are. And maybe it's attached to the item. Like this particular client I'm thinking of makes these things called packages, which is sort of like a unit, an electrical unit that goes out in the field. And these are like almost like little sheds, really. And there's tons and tons of work that goes into them and different materials. So to track the actual materials that went in, like they said, the vendor has a piece of paper that goes with that serialized item. That piece of paper goes with that package as it's being built and moved on physically.
And so if it's a package, are there multiple pieces of paper that go with it?
All over the place.
And so the error that can go along with
That's
that,
right.
right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So Sean, addressing some specific considerations for manufacturers as it pertains to their ERP software, can you talk to us about CPQ or configure price quote solutions?
Yeah. I think the first time I ran into CPQ was with Aptus. So Aptus is a platform. Gosh, I can't remember. I think it's an independent company still. I'm surprised about that. But anyway, this sort of a organization kind of came on the scene based on sort of Salesforce, right? Salesforce.com. Sort of, impending its strong hammer down on CRM, right? Because there was Siebel and other products before that, but Salesforce took over the market for sure. And so what Aptus was able to do was to build software that sits on top of Salesforce and even independently now, where a salesperson could be talking to a customer and say, okay, do you want option A or B? Oh, I want option B. Great. Well, option B has these options to it, C, D, or E. Which ones do you want? I want D and E. Oh, well, D has these options to it. Do you want 2 or 3? Oh, I want 3. Great. So that's the configure part of it, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll get to that in a moment. That's configure. The pricing is based on all those options that you select drives the pricing. And then the quote is, okay, that's what you want. Bing, push the button to create quote, and voila, there's the quote. Mm-hmm. And it gets sent over to the customer. They review it all electronically. They agree to it. They electronically sign, click save, maybe submit a PO, and voila, the deal's done. And the salesperson, is cheered on by all the people around, and yay, ring a gong and everything, right? That's the vision, and that is what CPQ is for some organizations. But the reality is, the configuration can be a nightmare, right? It can be so hard to say, here's our options A, B, and C, and B has da-da-da, and D has da-da-da-da-da, right? That takes a lot of work to standardize the product. So that's the first kind of issue that you run into. The second issue is on pricing. The other thing that these CPQs kind of do is if the margin is below a certain amount, then kick the quote over to a director to review and confirm it, which is kind of nice because then the workflow is built into the app. Like, why are you giving them a 75% discount, right? Like, what are you doing? Like, at least we can control that now. Before, salespeople would go out and do it, and then we find out later.
Right. Once the order's been placed.
Yeah, like, that's way too late, right? Mm-hmm. And then even in the quote, depending again on those attributes, the system can say, oh, well, here's the terms and conditions then that need to go in the quote magically. They just pop right in. But those do change often. There's negotiations with customers. So it's sort of, so much of software of life really is this 80-20 Pareto analysis rule, right? 80% of what we do is very standard. 20% is just a nightmare. So let's try to automate the 80%. That's what CPQ is. But then, working with organizations, again, we've had probably 3 or 4 CPQ projects I can think of with software companies specifically, where trying to get them to standardize on what their features and functions and options and options and attributes, there's a phrase, is hard. It's very hard, very, very hard. That's the first challenge, like I said. The second one, again, is to define the pricing rules and at what point do people need approvals and what are the prices for all these different components and all that. But let's say you work all that out. There you go. So you can tell I'm not the CPQ salesperson, right? Because it's hard. It's hard on the client side. The software is pretty easy to set up, right? And there's many other CPQ solutions out there. There's some specific for NetSuite. I think, Verena, I think is the one that we've run across the most. I might not be getting that name right. But then there's other CPQs. Infor has a CPQ solution specifically for the Infor tool. So there's good solutions out there for sure. But a manufacturer, by going through all of those steps, they're really solving a lot of problems for the organization because the standardization up front helps with the standardization on the back end, right? Like we only build certain things, I haven't actually talked about one of my most favorite companies ever on these calls, but I'm about to because they just opened one 4 miles from us, which is crazy, and that is In-N-Out Burger.
Okay, right.
I love In-N-Out Burger. I love it. I had a triple animal style the other night. I had a lot of food that day, and it was amazing. Oh my God. Anyway, but their menu's very simple, which makes it easier on the back end than to actually fulfill an order quickly and with a lot of quality. That's the vision that the manufacturers have of CPQ. which I love that vision. I think it's very, very valid. But again, our clients, the folks that we work with, they understand, whoa, we got a lot of work of standardization to do up front. Building it into the app is the easy part. But it forces that standardization, which all of enterprise systems, especially for manufacturers, maybe Quentin, you could even talk to one of the customers we worked with recently that had to standardize their item master. Like, it's hard to standardize.
Extremely hard.
Yeah, so like even that standardization.
Yeah, sometimes you're dealing with every branch. If you have multiple branches, have a different version of the exact same item with different attributes, different specifications. Which ones do you standard on? Which one's the correct? Do we do it different if it's coming from a different location? Understanding your item master, and then when it builds out into multiple levels and tiers and sort of a matrix structure with so many variables, you can get into literally thousands of options for a single build. And it can just destroy an organization's ability to be efficient without having certainty of what that item master should look like. And then standardizing it and going, okay, we're not going to build 75 variants of this item. We're going to build this item and these 3 variants. But that first step is understanding your item master.
Right, and you can see how that ties into CPQ, where the variants or the bill of materials or bill of operations, whatever, are driven by the configuration that the salesperson chooses up front. So there's just a lot of like, it's like I think we were doing a house project or something. We're like, oh hey, we're gonna fix the we're gonna do a little bit of paint touch-ups, right? Because you're like, okay, fine, I'll get the paint, I'll slap, and then you look at the
see all
wall,
the spots, right?
Oh my God, we have to paint the whole thing, and so then you paint the whole wall, and you're like, there's a wall next to it, right? Like it's sort of like that. It's easy. The steps to get there are straightforward. Like it's easy to cover but it's like give a moose a muffin. Remember those books?
Where do you start? Where do you stop?
Give a mouse
That's
a cookie.
it. That's right. Yeah, it starts small and then it just gets bigger. That's the risk of CPQ. But like you said, when an organization goes through that effort, man, it really pays off.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, it's like hard work. That saying, hard work now or hard work later. You have to do the work either on the front end or the back end.
That's right.
It has to be done.
That's
right.
That's right.
So Quentin, you mentioned earlier about real-time reporting. Can you talk to us about the importance of being able to track in real time as a production order goes through each phase of its process? Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Well, absolutely. Well, as most people know, today is kind of an instant gratification type day. You order something, you expect it tomorrow.
Right.
Well, how can you even tell if you don't have that real time from a manufacturing perspective of what's going on the shop floor? That CPQ process goes through, wow, we've got a sale. We've got all the specifications of what we're going to build. Great. Now that has to get onto the shop floor. You have to have all the inventory. Is all the inventory at that location? Can it be used? Is it already dedicated to another order? So that real-time visibility of the order as it goes step by step through the different work centers or phases of the work order or production order is vital to an organization knowing when they can get it to the customer. So if you can track it and know all the parts are there, if it got completed, how long it took, not only do you have the real cost involved with it, all the items and all the labor that went into it and where it is in the phase, you can then tell your customer, oh, based on past experience, this should arrive at this time. We've got everything lined up. We can see where it is in the process. It will be finished at the end of the day. It'll get on the last truck. It'll arrive tomorrow. And for manufacturers, especially for those very fast manufacturers who have short build times, this can be absolutely vital for them to be able to get their orders out that day and keep their promises. Sometimes the salespeople are saying, you'll have this for sure tomorrow, or maybe in 3 days, whatever it is for that particular manufacturer. And this kind of gets into wholesale distribution as well. Distribution centers often deal with this as well, but having that shop floor visibility can make or break that available to promise setup and really make sure that the business can keep its promises, sell its products, and be, the front runner in that particular vertical or business. Because if they fall behind, if they don't have that visibility, if they're not technologically advanced enough, they're going to fall behind their competitors and they're not going to be able to keep up. And with the market as it is today with COVID and the pandemic, that can break a business. So.
Right. They'll move on to the next person that might have it.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Sean, what do you feel are some factors that can be overlooked when manufacturers are looking at increasing their efficiency with ERP software?
I think I like this call. This is a good call.
Yeah.
This is very practical, right? I like to keep it practical, and I think it's as usual, right? With all of our marketing and everything that Sean and Ashley are doing, even for our ERP news, everything we're trying to make it very consumable and like bite size for real people, right? You know, you have wonderful management teams and all they're doing is focusing on efficiencies and everything. That's phenomenal, right? But a lot of our clients don't have that. They're trying to improve their situations and while they're working in the business and on the business and so on and so forth. So ERP alone does not create efficiency. And you know, that's like I'll do 3 strikes. That's the first strike about ERP.
Absolutely.
It doesn't. And I'm thinking, you know, from a very, 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 very make to order environment that again we worked on together. They make art, literally like one-off pieces of art for the world's most known modern artists, all the way through to organizations that like make shrimp. They don't make the shrimp, but they take the shrimp and add a couple things to it and then put it in packages and hundreds of millions of dollars of shrimp. Billions really over time. And if you look at the benefit of ERP, again, the most important thing is that gradient, that crawl, walk, run. So the crawl really is a fancy way, even though that's not a very fancy way, of saying, clean your stuff up. I'll watch my language. You gotta clean up your stuff. Get your item master right, get your BOMs right, get your costings right. Get everything else, your customer lists, like your vendor lists. I'm talking like all the least sexy things you can think of with ERP. That's really what the focus of the phase 1 is. But sort of the crawl phase, because we're also putting in systems though that are usually cloud-based, not always. Some of our manufacturers don't do it, like, or we have a big distributor that's almost $1 billion and they want it on-prem. So they wanted their systems and they have them. But same thing even for them, like get the inventory right, get everything about your items and what you do correct in the system. And then maybe even on the sales order side, get that sort of sales process really cleaned up, right? So all the boring, non-sexy stuff.
Well, like our data migration team would tell you, right? To have your data clean, right? We hear that
right, exactly.
constantly.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we went through a go live over Labor Day, and wow, we're trying to move over this information, and the customer list isn't correct. Like your customer list isn't correct.
Right.
How can that be? Oh, an older customer, whatever. It's like, okay, fine. So that's the first step. Is like you're basically going to do what you do today, just a lot more efficient in the system because we actually cleaned up our stuff that's been a little messy for the last 10, 20 years. Then once that platform's in place, we can sort of walk, right? Where, oh, well, maybe we can do some more integration with vendors or customers. Maybe we can bring in a CPQ tool at that point. Or, maybe we can do online ordering that we didn't do before, right? Quentin's working on that with a client of trying to get a portal in place. And that's hard because of the standardization of items and that kind of stuff, right?
A lot of decisions around that to get it right.
Yeah. So that's sort of that walk phase, right? Now run is where it gets really interesting. You get all that sort of, kind of base in place. Then you get sort of your kind of core differentiation for the middle. Now, what's the innovation? Like, what are the things that enable us to maybe bring in adjacent products to our existing product portfolio, or even services, right? We're talking to a company right now that manufactures specific item, and they're going into the market and buying these service firms that go out and service their products because it's more recurring revenue.
Oh, interesting.
So now their platform needs to be set up to support a whole different line of business and be able to report on profitability and even sort of take a client that bought our product and now we're going to offer them services and we need to report across that. So that innovation level is where it's super cool, right? And that's where you got to be careful if you're looking at ERP for manufacturers. It's very easy to kind of get sold on a vision because it's true. And you may even have competitors already there, but man, they've been working for years on this other crap kind of stuff, right? And then they're like, oh, hey, now we can blow out our Amazon business because we can take better advantage of integrations that we didn't have with our old legacy systems or whatever it is. Then they can do like these really innovative things, which I think, there's so much capital and so much opportunity still. And like you said, the customer demands are just going through the roof. So the innovators are the ones that are going to win. But the real innovators that we see in the market and the companies we love working with are the ones that are willing to take that approach, because we want long-term success with our clients. And if they just want sort of we want to be efficient tomorrow, it's like, okay, we're probably not the right client to help you or right firm to help you. We can't do that. But we can help you get this in place. We're like the old plower people, I guess, but it's kind of true, right? That we've been through so many of these situations that the, fly by night sort of, let's go get an ERP and everything's wonderful, just doesn't work in the long term.
Right.
But I will say one thing before we pass over to Q too.
Yeah.
There are instances where an organization is growing so fast and they just need to get something in place, which is better than nothing, makes total sense.
Right.
ERP can totally help with that too. So you sort of have to just as always, right? I can hear you saying this to me on all these calls we've done, we got to do our homework and we have to, really understand our needs, right? That's what we're talking about. But in this area for manufacturers, there's so much flash that it's so easy to get sold on, what this,
all the big promises,
all
right?
of the promises and the apps that are out there and the functionality. I wanted, ATP available to promise and okay, buy my app. No, because we still have to figure out where your inventory is and what are your lead times. And now with COVID, lead times are out the door. They're like 3x and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Quentin, let me ask you this again, back in the trenches, working with your clients. In your experience, what details can you speak to us about inventory, lot control, freight and shipping, and et cetera, that people should consider?
Well, manufacturing starts with inventory and ends with shipping. You have that manufacturing in the middle, but without the inventory, serialization, lot control, knowing where your bins are, where your materials are, how quickly you can get them and where they are and what's really there versus what was already used or what's gone. Do we have a miscount? All of that is vital to having a full business. So manufacturer, yes, they build things, but there's all the other parts of the business that have to be in place as well. And inventory for a manufacturer is absolutely vital. Knowing exactly where that is, what the cost of it was. Do we use this one first or that one first? Is this the right serial number? Did it go into the right build? All of that is extremely important to being able to successfully run a manufacturing business for certain ones. Sean talked a little bit about the different layers there. And for some, they need that solid foundation and that's where they're at. Others, they're really ready for that innovation. And when you're talking inventory, you can put in all sorts of automations, but is it right for you? Do you have that foundation in place? So that's kind of the inventory front end conversation. And for different organizations, maybe lot control doesn't matter. Maybe serialization isn't a part of their business. They make one thing and they make it well and they make it fast. And so inventory is just how much, how quickly, and can we move it? So then the other side, shipping and freight can't be underestimated. And in today's world, you can make all the product you want, but if you can't get it to your customers, again, you're shot. You're not going to be able to do it. So having great vendor relationships, having integration with your shipping providers, having the right freight providers that can do it at, having a contracts and agreements that get you the right price to get it there, as well as the visibility and the tracking of those freight and shipping orders that you're putting out there. So that is very vital for manufacturers as well. Sometimes they're manufacturing and distributing to other businesses, so they'll have regular freight shipments and they can do a pallet or they can do a container load. And what's actually on that container? What's actually arriving? Did it arrive okay? Was it damaged? What's going to come back? All of that is very vital to manufacturers and is often missed when they're looking at the flashy ERP that goes, ooh, you're going to automate our shop floor. Well, can't get it there, doesn't matter. If you don't have the parts to make it, doesn't matter. So all of it's very vital to making sure that your manufacturing organization can get from start to finish, order to cash and delivery and all of that. So I think that's very important and often gets missed when you're looking at ERP because you're just focusing on the thing that you do. I build things.
Right.
So it's a little bit about it. I could definitely talk more.
Yeah, usually the accountants, say, okay, well, like how do you calculate landed cost, right? Because that's a big deal, right? Because you get the item and you have your labor that goes into it, and that's its cost, right? No. There's shipping, tons of shipping. The shipping cost is crazy, right? So, yeah, I think you're right, Q, that those are some key things to focus on with ERP too, the shipping side.
One more thing about shipping: knowing the cost up front is extremely important for a lot of manufacturing organizations. And they don't know. They oftentimes will be shipping something out the door and have no idea what their freight cost is going to be until that moment. So the sales rep maybe promised free freight, but it's costing them almost their entire margin to get it there. So having good visibility and knowing up front what your shipping and freight costs are is extremely important.
Now, is that just like from learned experience that they're calculating their shipping and their freight, or is it just like something that was overlooked by someone, or?
I can think of a client that basically says, our products are of a certain size, certain weight, and there's a kind of a if you think about most e-commerce companies, there's like a fixed cost for shipping, right?
Like a flat rate.
Like the flat rate, right? Well, it's flat to you, Miss Consumer, but to them, it's variable based on what it actually is. So if those costs, like Quentin's saying, start to escalate beyond what we say the flat rate on the website are, then you're eating margin. Like literally, you're taking money out of the business to go give it to the shipper. So you have to be very careful about these things.
Yeah, and again, if you don't have good inventory and understanding of the size, shape, weight of your items when they're going to complete, you can't estimate your shipping properly. So that also feeds into it. And if you don't have that foundation from your item master with all those attributes, you can't calculate it ahead of time, except on an estimate or guesstimate basis. So
dimensions and weight. That's fun data migration right there.
Oh yeah.
Right? Oh my gosh.
Dimensions and weight, and what can work with other items that may be shipped on the same shipment.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I think wrapping up our time today, is there any other advice you can share with our viewers and listeners about increasing efficiency with manufacturing ERP software?
The last thing I would say is, I do sound like I'm a old guy, ERP, been around forever and all that wisdom and everything, but it really is true in this space that just know what you're getting. Like you really need to know what you're getting. This is one area where it's a lot of, sort of flash in the pan stuff. Don't go for it. Like start with the basics. I think we say this every call, but especially in this area, we have just experienced nightmare implementations or projects where they go way over budget because they're sold on a vision, and then we go in there like, okay, we got to get your dimensions. Where are they? Oh, we don't have them. Okay, but you have 10,000 items. I guess we have to go get them.
Oh my gosh.
So just be aware, be realistic. That's the key thing.
The only thing I would add to that is that when you're looking at any change in an organization, really look across the entire organization, because technology can only help you as much as you can allow it to help you. It's not like you buy the ERP. Great, it can do all of these things, but can you really use it for that? So understanding your own organization and where putting technology in place will actually help you. Take a step back, look at where you're inefficient, look at how you could become efficient with changes, automation, etc., and then focus on that area. Oftentimes, as you said, you focus on the shiny thing, but really just take that step back, and as we usually say, do an analysis, understand your needs, and then focus your technology changes in that place.
Right.
So,
well, as with all of our calls, we could continue this forever, and maybe we'll continue it on another webinar for sure.
Good.
So, but Quentin, Sean, thank you for joining me today. As always, sharing great information with us. So,
you're welcome.
Thanks. Thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar. Please let us know if you have any questions. We're happy to help in any way we can. Our next call is scheduled for Thursday, September 30th, a free CPE event where we will be discussing what to do when you outgrow your accounting software. Please go to our website, erpadvisorsgroup.com, for more details and to register.
ERP Advisors Group is one of the country's top independent enterprise software consulting firms, advising mid to large-sized businesses on selecting and implementing business applications, including ERP, CRM, HCM, business intelligence, and other enterprise applications, which equate to millions of dollars in software deals each year across many industries. This has been the ERP Advisor.